So hello and welcome back to another video, guys. Now this video is a bit different. This is a brand new thing I'm starting here on the channel. Now this isn't nothing new. There are people on YouTube already doing this. Some of my friends are already doing this. I just thought, hey, this is a cool concept and why not? This is giving me the opportunity to talk about all the new films I've watched in the last month. So we've just gone into September. Hey, we're getting through 2020. We're nearly done with it. Thank God. But I want to talk about all the new films I watched in August. Now, when I say new, I don't mean like newly released. I mean films that I've never watched before. So I have watched a couple repeats this month. Like I watched the Phantom Menace. I watched Pirates of the Caribbean. I watched a few Bond films. But I've already seen them before. So I'm not going to talk about them. I'm going to talk about films which were new to me. These are first time viewings for me throughout the month of August. Now, a couple of them are brand new releases. And a couple of them are not. They're older films. Just first time watches for me. So, how many films did I watch? 3, 6, 9, 12... 15. I watched 15 new films throughout the month of August. So I was watching a film every 2 days, more or less. But let's get started. So these are in order of what I watched as well. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. First film I'm going to talk about is first new film to me that I watched during August 2020, can't speak, was Clash of the Titans. Now that's right, this is the original Clash of the Titans film, which, you know, there's been a remake, and then the remake had a sequel, Wrath of the Titans. This film came out in 1981. It's an old film. This was one of the first big budget special effects films, and you can tell. And what did I think of this film? It's cheesy 80s, but I really enjoyed it. I loved how over the top some of the sequences were when they did not have the technology to make these sequences look great back then, but they went for it anyway. The monsters look really cool. And it's interesting, as someone who's seen the remake, you know, the remake's alright, I don't really care for it. But the thing about the remake is it has a lot of monsters from the original in, so I'm watching it going, oh cool, I know that, that's really interesting. And yeah, it was a fun film. I'll give Clash of the Titans out of 10. I'll give it a 6.5. I thought it was good. Next up. Now, if you want to hear me talk about this one in more detail, I talked about it in an episode of my podcast, Off to the Movies. Link in the description to that, by the way. The Kissing Booth 2. Now, that's right. Netflix actually made a sequel to The Kissing Booth. The first Kissing Booth was awful. You know, me and my mates watched it for a laugh. And then we decided to do an episode of the podcast on it because we thought, why not? Let's do a really bad movie. And this movie is absolutely awful. The charm of the first one is it's so bad, it's kind of funny. They're coming out with rules which are absolutely hilarious. Like, if someone's mad at you, just buy them ice cream and they have to forgive you. It's like rules like that are so stupid. It's just like, oh, okay, so if someone went in and beat the shit out of someone, but then they bought them ice cream, it would all be fine. It's like, the things that they were coming out with was so pathetically stupid, it was hilarious. And I think this film embraces that it's really stupid, but it tries to take itself seriously at the same time, and this one becomes a bit boring. I compare this film to the Sharknado sequels. I know it seems like a weird comparison at first, but the first Sharknado is so stupid, and it embraces its stupidity. It's really funny. And then the next one's tried to be a bit more serious and tried to do some character development. It gets a bit boring because no one actually cares about those films. And it's the same here with The Kissing Booth. No one actually cares about this film. So when it tried to take itself seriously, it just wasn't great. It wasn't a good idea. I'm going to give The Kissing Booth 2 out of 10. I'm going to give it out of 10. I'm going to give it a 1 out of 10. I think it's a pretty terrible movie. Next up. This one here is going to get some people's attention. I watched for the first time ever Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. That's right. Now, Stanley Kubrick is such a beloved director, and the only film of his I'd ever watched was The Shining. But as you'll see in this list, I really got into my Stanley Kubrick last month. I decided to go through a lot of his classics. And what did I think of Full Metal Jacket? I loved the first half of this film when they were in their boot camp training. I thought it was great. The acting was fantastic. The tension, some of the scenes in the first half of the movie were absolutely gorgeous and so gripping. And I remember just thinking, wow, this is intense as hell. And then, of course, they go off to Vietnam to fight in the war, and there's not really much of a bridge there. You go from boot camp to there they are, boom. And I know that's what it was like for soldiers back then. It was a very quick process. But I think as an audience member, a bit of a bridge there would have been nice. So when it gets to Vietnam, the first half of them being there, I found the film dipped a bit. I actually wish we were still at the boot camp. I found that stuff a bit more interesting. But then the last half hour of the film was so intense again. It came right back, and it was such a really gripping movie. The characters were fantastic. Some of the shots as well, like just the slow-mo shots of some characters getting shot. It was so mesmerizing. And I, as an audience member, was just so curious as to how things were going to play out that you can't take your eyes off the screen. I'm going to give Full Metal Jacket a 8 out of 10. Next up is The Mission. This is starring Robert De Niro and Jeremy Irons. I love both these actors. You know, Robert De Niro's fantastic. Jeremy Irons, I'm also a big fan on. He's a seriously underrated actor. I know that people who know him praise him a lot, but I don't think enough people praise him. I think he's amazing. So I really wanted to watch this film. I thought this film looked fantastic, and it wasn't. I found myself looking at my watch a lot throughout this film and wanting to go on my phone. I found it very tedious at times and kind of boring. It's a shame because while the actors will do a good job, and I think the final act of the film is really good, the first two acts, they just drag. There's just not much happening. Things are moving at a snail's pace. Robert De Niro has nothing to do for a lot of this film, and he's the main character. He looks bored on set. Jeremy Irons doesn't look like he wants to be there. Wow, Liam Neeson as well was in this. I forgot he looks young. So yeah, The Mission was a film which I was very, very disappointed in. I really wanted to love that film. It looked great. But I didn't. I'm going to give The Mission a 5 out of 10. Next up, we have An American Pickle. This was my return to cinema. This was the first film I saw in cinema after the, huge COVID outbreak we had. And this was Seth Rogen's new comedy film. I'm a big Seth Rogen fan. I think his later films, This Is the End, The Interview, are fantastic. I love Pineapple Express, Zack and Myra. He has some really, really good movies. And lately he seems to be knocking out the park. I really loved his film last year with Charlize Theron. I can't think of the name of it in a minute off the top of my head, but I remember really enjoying that movie last year. So here we have his new one, An American Pickle. And this one it's okay. You know, the plot of this film is, a guy comes back who lived over 100 years ago to present day. And they don't roll with it as well as they could have. Some of the jokes they could have gone with him discovering things. That, the possibilities are endless there. But what we got was just an okay movie. I'm never a big fan on when actors are playing two characters, especially in films. It just doesn't work very well. There are the exceptions, of course, but this one I thought kind of fell into the not working so well. It was just okay. I'm going to give An American Pickle a 5.5 out of 10. As you can see, my score's dropped a little bit already because I did review it recently here on the channel. So if you want to see me go into more detail on that, go check out the review. Next up is Legends of the Fall. This is starring Brad Pitt and Anthony Hopkins. This film, wow. This film throws you in all sorts of directions. So it's basically just a love triangle between three brothers. And it's incredible where this story goes. It throws you from one place to the other, and things that you wouldn't expect to happen in this film happen. The last act, again, there's some brutal stuff in it, some real sad moments. And I was expecting this film to have a real downer ending, and you can see it coming. For those of you who've seen it, I don't want to spoil it, but one of the last scenes, you can see it coming, you're like, oh no. So this ain't going to end well. And then bam, out of nowhere, something happens and you're like, yes, it's going to have a happy ending. Or not happy, but not a completely depressing, horrible ending. And I love that because films like this, you can almost sense the horrible, sad ending coming. But this one actually had a really nice ending. I I actually really enjoyed this movie. Legends of the Fall, I'm going to give a 7.5 to. I enjoyed this movie a lot. Next up, we have 2001: A Space Odyssey. Now, that's right, I've never seen this movie until now. I'd say Stanley Kubrick, I was proper getting on his films this month. 2001: A Space Odyssey. You know, I've got to tread on very, very dangerous territory here because I know this is one of the most beloved movies ever made. So I'll say this, outside of Star Wars in terms of score, I think this film has maybe the best score I've ever heard in a film. The cinematography is off the chart. It looks gorgeous. And especially for its time. I mean, when did it come out? 1968, I believe. This is one of the best looking movies I've ever seen. It is absolutely visually beautiful. It's incredible. And it works so well with the score. A lot of these shots, it really builds and creates this grand scene, and a lot of the space shots as well, they look far ahead of its time. It looks like it's from, this film looks like it could have been made in the 80s or 90s. Honestly, it looks that stunning. The actors all do a great job. This film it's really, really, really impressive. My issue with the film is that, yeah, I think it is a bit long. There are some scenes which didn't need to be as dragged out as they could. I think everyone knows it's a very slow-paced movie. And while I respect it in a lot of these scenes need to be slow to create this atmosphere that the film's trying to create. There are certain scenes where it's like, come on. I'm going to give 2001: Space Odyssey an 8.5 out of 10. I think this film is really, really, really good. And then we got another, and I think it's the final Stanley Kubrick movie I'm talking about today, Barry Lyndon. Barry Lyndon, it's funny, I hadn't heard loads of people talk about this movie. Thinking about it, I have also seen A Clockwork Orange. I watched that the month before, because I know at the start I said I'd seen The Shining. I'd also seen A Clockwork Orange. So this was the last of the big Stanley Kubrick movies I'd been told to watch. I know there's still some out there for me to watch. This was the last big one. Barry Lyndon might be the one that I stayed tuned in for the most, as in it held my attention for the longest, just because I was so fascinated by this character, wanting to know where he was going and what he was doing. I found his story, his journey, really compelling. A lot of the things he went through, I found fascinating. And a lot of the other characters you see in this, I think, actually are really, really interesting as well. Because I think there's a few side characters in other Kubrick films that I've seen that, you know, they're there for filler. They're there for, hey, I'm a side character, here I am. I'm going to throw a couple lines at you, and that's it. Whereas with Barry Lyndon, I actually feel like a lot of the side characters work a lot better. Barry Lyndon was a really entertaining movie. I didn't love it, but I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed this movie. Next up is another one, which is going to shock people, because the first time watch for me. Top Gun. Yeah, this is the first time I've watched Top Gun. So this is pure 80s cheese. Pure 80s cheese. It's the best way to describe this film. When I think of 80s movies now, Top Gun is probably going to be the first one that comes to my mind that defines the 80s, because the 80s is it's just a cheese fest, isn't it? But we love it. You know, who doesn't love a bit of that cheesy music and those cheesy films? The acting can be very over the top at times, but it's amazing. The music, you know, again, it's just cheesy music after cheesy music, and I really found myself enjoying it. I don't know how to talk about this film, to be honest. It's just something else, isn't it? It's just fun. A lot of the action sequences are good. There are a couple which look a little bit outdated. But yeah, I'm going to give Top Gun a 7 out of 10. I quite enjoyed this movie. I didn't love it like I thought I would, because people build up Top Gun as this great 80s movie, and it really does define the 80s. I really am not going to argue with it much, but I didn't love it. Next up is 3 Billboards. Let me see if I can get the full title here. 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Yeah. This film was amazing. This film was absolutely amazing. You know, this is based on a true story. So when I say, like, I found the story compelling, it's hard to say that because it is based on a true story, and what happened is awful. It's an awful story, but it's so compelling, and I loved this movie. All the actors done a 10 out of 10 job. The acting in this movie is incredible. It's actually got a really dark humour to it at times, which I love. I love dark humour for some reason. I love stuff like that. The Wolf of Wall Street. Those kind of things really crack me up. And you really connect with characters in this movie. Really connect. And you feel awful for some of them. This film is incredible. I can see why it's going up for so many awards. I loved this movie. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Next up is Forbidden Planet. Forbidden Planet is from 1956. This movie would then go on to become the 60s show, Lost in Space, and now Netflix have a Lost in Space series going on. I think it's about to air its 3rd and final season. This film, you can tell that this inspired Star Trek. It's funny when people talk about the great sci-fis and they say, like, oh, Star Trek surely inspired Star Wars. But Star Trek has always been known to be like the first big sci-fi thing. But what inspired Star Trek, and I believe that Forbidden Planet is one of the products which inspired Star Trek. You know, through the costumes, the set designs, the teleportations, and that they're always doing throughout the film. You know, and even have similar beams that shoot them up and similar cylinders which they stand in and stuff. I thought this film actually looked great for its age. One of the first big coloured films, I believe, as well. The robots in this looked really, really cool, and I like the little twists and stuff at the end. And it's very realistic in the sense, like, these men have been out in space for years, and they find a woman, and of course they're all obsessed with her. And I found that really, really fascinating actually to watch. I'm going to give Forbidden Planet what am I going to give it? I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I really, really did enjoy this movie. Next up, we got a Steven Spielberg movie, Munich. You know, we all know the story of Munich. But something I didn't really know loads about, you know, what happened around this tragic event. But watching it through the eyes of Spielberg, him presenting this movie to us, I found it really fascinating, some of the things that the lead character had to go through here, and God, some of the jump scares in this film. Just the sheer, when there's a, you know, I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't watched it. That's why I'm trying to stand on, you know, I'm trying not to go into too much detail here. But there's a scene where a bomb goes off in this, I think it's like a hotel. My God, did that shit me up. I jumped out my seat. I thought the film was really compelling. Again, my issue with it is I only really connected with the lead character. Other than that, the rest were kind of... but yeah, it was good. Munich, I'm going to give a 7 out of 10 too. So then the last 3 films that I want to talk about are all new releases. Now, 2 of them I've reviewed extensively here on the channel, so I'm going to be brief on them. But before we get to them too, we've got Project Power, the new Netflix film, starring Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. This film has a great concept, but the film kind of sucks. I love the concept of this movie, but I just did not enjoy this movie much. I did not connect to any of the characters. I found Jamie Foxx's character especially really irritating and boring, because he was trying to be Mr. Cool all the time. I found all the other characters kind of annoying, like the girl in it, and unfortunately even Joseph Gordon-Levitt was a bit dull, which is a shame because he's such a good actor. The plot just goes nowhere. It could have gone in so many interesting directions. The direction it went in, I found, was just disappointing. Some of the powers as well. There was a laughable scene at the end where some guy turned into some huge, weird monster. And I thought that was hilariously bad. Yeah, I didn't really enjoy this movie. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. I thought this was a pretty bad movie. Next up, we've got Tenet, which is the big film this month. I've done a complete review of this movie, so... if you're going to judge my opinion here on Tenet, and you want more explanations, go watch my review, because I go into a lot more detail on it. I thought Tenet was okay. The plot is really convoluted. I thought the sound mixing and the editing was absolutely laughably terrible. And I think Christopher Nolan just had a wet dream, put it on paper. Took him 10 years to make the film, and he got lost in the film, unfortunately, and it's a messy film. But yeah, there's Tenet. You know, I gave that a 6, so I'll stick with a 6, to be fair on that in a minute. That hasn't changed. And then last up, the last film I watched in August was New Mutants. Yes, that's right, we finally got New Mutants. It's only taken us 3 years. And, you know, the same sort of things for New Mutants. It was okay. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was very middle of the road. The characters get no development. There are certain elements of the story which feel very undeveloped. There are a couple scenes which are laughable. There are a couple scenes which are highly entertaining. The film is a mix of superhero and horror, and it kind of fails at both. Saying that, I was entertained. I liked the creepy vibe to the film, and the last 20 minutes were highly entertaining. I really enjoyed the last 20 minutes. But all that said, I'm really pleased that the Fox X-Men films are done. I'm going to stick with my 6 out of 10 on New Mutants as well. But anyway, there we go. There's that video. I hope you enjoyed it. There's all the films I watched throughout the month of August. I don't really know. I'm in September. We got Mulan. I can't even think of what else is coming out in September at the minute. I'm having a bit of a brain fart. I don't think there's much. I know there's a few TV shows, but of course we're just doing movies on this series. So yeah, we'll see what September brings. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this, my new little series. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time for another video. Bye bye.